We learned in the previous lessons, the form will accept an instance, and this is equivalent to what the user types into those inputs. I'm going to extract those so I can access them as variables, and I'm going to close PHP so that I can begin building the markup. So let's do one together and then I'll paste in the rest. This label will be called title, and that's going to correspond to an input where the user can specify what the title of their widget is, or what the heading above the widget will be. Again, we'll do an input, and this type will be text. We'll give it a class of wide-fat, which we learned in a previous lesson. That'll make its style a little bit better. The ID is going to be getFieldID, and we'll pass the name title. And this will generate a unique ID. Next, we'll do name. And again, this will be echo this getFieldName title. And finally, we'll do a value. And this time we'll say isSetTitle, meaning if the user types something into that title input box, then we need to make sure that we echo that out. And we'll run that through the escape attributes function just to be safe. And that looks good. So we should make sure the label connects to this ID. So I will paste that in. Let's test it out. I'll come back, reload the page, and we have an error. And of course, that's because we need to open up PHP again. Let's try it again. Now, I will drop this down, and sure enough, we have our first input. I can type anything I want, save it, and that value has been saved. Okay, to save a little bit of time, and because we've already discussed this in previous lessons, I'm going to paste in a block of code. There we are. And again, if any of this is confusing to you, go back and watch the episode on working with forms. Mostly it's the exact same thing. We've created another section for a username because they need to specify what is the Twitter account that we're pulling from, and I've given that a name of username. And then finally, we need to allow them to specify how many tweets should we receive. But we can take advantage of HTML5 and use an input type of number, and that will only allow the user to type in a digit. If they type in anything else, like a letter, it will immediately delete that. Now, for older browsers that don't support that, this will default to a regular text box. With an input type of number, we can specify what is the minimum number they can type and the maximum number. And then finally, as we do up here, we specify a value. If they write something in here, we want to make sure we echo that out. Otherwise, we'll set a default of 5. So let's test all of this out now. If I drag this down, sure enough, we have our title, Twitter username, and number of tweets. And notice that I've applied a slightly more narrow width, and that's because we don't need that much room for a few characters. Now note if I type DD, tab away, it's going to remove that immediately. So let's test it with some real credentials. My tweets, save it, and sure enough, that all is saving. So again, if you create widgets often, you might want to save some snippets like this to either a text expander, or if you're enjoying Komodo Edit, you can save them to your toolbox right here. You have a lot of options. Make sure you're not typing this over and over. In the next lesson, we're going to start building the widget, which will take care of querying the Twitter API.